What's going on, everybody? Aiden from Birds vs. Boys here, and free agency is come and gone. The draft is come and gone, and by all things considered, the Eagles hit it out of the park in both of these circumstances. Coming out of the draft, I think they did a phenomenal job building for the now and for the future. I think there'll be a few guys that they drafted this year that will have an immediate impact, and let's talk about that today and the position battles that may be going on post-draft with some of the new guys and how they've revamped this roster after a total collapse at the end of last season. Before we do so, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube page, Birds vs. Boys. Thank you to everybody who followed along with our live stream during the draft and then our reactions about the draft afterwards. It is now post-draft season. We'll talk about the rosters as they remain, but stay up to date with all the news because as the Eagles always do, the roster today is not the roster that you will see come September in Brazil. So let's get into it. I have three key positions highlighted as position battles right now, a week after the draft. The first one I want to talk about is wide receiver 3, because I think that this has been one that has been up in the air and it has not been a position battle when it probably should have been. Quez Watkins was the wide receiver 3. Before that, the year we had Zach Pascal, who was really good in what he was, which was more of just like knowing where he should be on the field, being a good blocker, everything like that. But you weren't getting a lot of value in terms of receptions and things along that lines. And then Quez Watkins was supposed to be this electrifying deep threat and just never turned out to be, and he is now with the Steelers. So in comes a few new guys who could be the new wide receiver 3. The one guy that I think is Paris Campbell. He obviously comes in and he's the obvious answer, right? Like they bring him in from the Colts. He has the familiarity with Nick Sirianni. He's had production in the past as a Colt at that wide receiver 3 position and gives you the electrifying down the field kind of threat that you're looking for from Quez Watkins. And then they drafted Nia Smith, who to me, the more and more I watch, is fascinating because we touched on it in our post-draft reaction show. He was the only guy that they drafted who was in the yellow on the relative athletic score. Everybody else is in the green. Everybody else is this stellar athlete, except Ania Smith. He's the only one who pops up as this yellow guy who may not pass all the athletic metrics. And then you keep watching his tape and you're saying, how is he not considered the best athlete that they drafted? This guy I described as someone you couldn't tackle in a phone booth. It was phenomenal to watch him post-catch what he was able to do, breaking tackles, bouncing off tacklers, turning a 10-yard catch into a 30-yard catch down the field just by his electrifying moves and his burst and agility and just, like I said, ability to bounce off tacklers. I thought it was fascinating. And you think about this guy, does he immediately challenge Paris Campbell for that wide receiver 3 scenario? And I think he does. And you're saying, well, he's young, he's coming out. Like, what do we think about this as a rookie going up against a vet like Campbell, who's been in the league and been productive in the league? But you think back, it's like just as early as last year, you had Tank Dell, who nobody saw coming out of the draft, had similar qualities and similar traits to Ania Smith. And you're saying, well, yeah, he has all these great traits and he seems to be a sleeper in all of these things, but can he contribute right away for a Texans team, who's got some guys, they signed Nico Collins, they got all these other people. And then he just takes over. And you're saying this year is Ania Smith this year's Tank Dell. And I genuinely believe that he can be the more and more that I watch this kid. And I think that this is a great pickup for them. And I think maybe come day one, when you're looking at depth charts, when they land in Brazil, Paris Campbell is probably your wide receiver 3. When we're looking at week 12, I think Ania Smith is probably your guy. I think he takes over. This is also a fascinating study because one of the knocks on Jalen Hurts has been not playing favorites, because I think any smart quarterback would know to get the ball to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith more than the other guys on the field. But one of the knocks has been, does he utilize every area of the field? Is he getting the tight end involved? Is he going across the middle of the field? Is he checking down to his running backs? Is he utilizing his wide receiver 3? And I think a lot of people would say, well, am I going to throw it to Quez Watkins, or I'm going to throw it to alpha wide receiver A.J. Brown, who is also my best friend? People get paid by throwing the ball to A.J. Brown. They probably don't make smart business decisions throwing the Quez Watkins. So this is a fascinating case study of, does he just not see all of the field and he's playing favorites, or did he just not have a viable wide receiver 3 and now he might in Ania Smith? So I think if we're talking position battles again, Campbell day 1 is your wide receiver 3. Week 12, it's Ania Smith. On to the offensive line, which we haven't really had a position battle here in quite some time. It's been pretty solidified. But with the retirement of Jason Kelsey, we're assuming Cam Jurgens now swings to the center position. Kelsey himself stated he was the best center prospect he had seen and handpicked him to replace him once he retired. So Jurgens is going to be that center. Obviously, everybody else is locked up on that line. Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, and Lane Johnson. So that leaves the right guard position that Cam Jurgens vacated. And we have a few different options here. And I think we got to start with Tyler Steen. It seems like they're going to give him every opportunity to be the starting offensive guard. Steen, who they drafted in the second round of last year out of Alabama, seems like a guy with the resume to be able to step up in year two and be that right guard. They wrote an article saying they have his locker right there with the rest of the starters in the locker room saying, hey, we're going to give you the opportunity to do this. Now, Steen was thrown into action last year, as well as Suo Opeta was when he was here, because of some injuries to Jurgens, to Landon Dickerson along that front. So Steen, we saw him and we saw him briefly. And you know what? He did struggle against the Cowboys. But again, most people do struggle if your first work is going against Micah Parsons. And, there was some tape of him, the spin move with Micah right past him. Yeah, that's going to happen to you. Welcome to the league, rookie. But at the same time, I think they're very, very high on him. And just like I said with Paris Campbell, who's like they're going to give him the wide receiver 3 capabilities out of the jump, I think Tyler Steen is probably going to give every opportunity as the offensive guard and the starter. But I think there are some other options, and they've built the depth on this line really well. I think people are forgetting right now because they went offensive line multiple times in the draft, and they knew that that was a position that people were going to be clamoring about. We forgot that we signed Matt Hennessy, and Hennessy is like a perfect like 6-man guy where he can play center, he can play offensive guard. They brought him in for, I think it was around $2 million. Now that is a short-term move. It's only for the 1 year, but I think that's a great depth piece. He is the perfect, if we're using the basketball analogy, and you almost have to on the offensive line, considering how often those guys roll ankles and get hurt and break fingers and everything like that. Everybody seems to miss a game or two on the line. And we've talked about how bad that goes when Lane Johnson's out. But I think Hennessy is that perfect, like 6-man. He's going to give you a few spot starts. He can come in the second quarter and you can trust him. I think he's a step up from the Jack Driscolls and the Suo Opetas of the world. So I'm glad they signed Hennessy. Do I think he's the starting right guard? I don't think so. But I do think he's a great spot start guy. That leaves the last and final piece of this puzzle, and it's Trevor Keegan, the offensive guard out of Michigan. So him and Zach Zinter, everybody was high on because they wanted those, as the Eagles refer to them, red star guys. So start every game, team captain on a national championship team, absolute maulers. His pass protection rate was high. His run protection rate was high. I think Keegan, maybe again, just like Anaya Smith, as these mid-round picks, it's exactly what you want to see from your mid-round picks. Are they starters for you day one? I don't think so. I don't think Trevor Keegan's going to be the day one starter. I'm really high on this kid that he could be here for the next 8 seasons, being a starting offensive guard for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, to do that, he would have to overcome Tyler Steen. But given the resume of Keegan, I could actually see him doing that. And I think he would be a fan favorite here in Philadelphia because he plays offensive guard like a maniac and looks like a maniac on the field. It is perfect for the system that they want to run, where they want to get downhill on people. We've gone back on this a few times, but one of the things missing in 2022 versus 2023, in 2022, they were so good at those 6 to 7 minute drives where you almost knew they were going to run it down your throat, and they still did. Control the clock to seal games, get back to back first downs. And that was really lost in last year. And that's what led to situations like Drew Lock going down the field on you. And the secondary gets so much blame for that. But at the same time, the Eagles had the ball multiple times in that situation where they could have just iced the clock and Drew Lock never got the ball back. New York Jets game, same thing. They're in a 3rd and 8. Jalen Hurts forces the ball. It's a pick 6. And all of a sudden you're saying they could have sealed that game if they were able to run the ball. I think Keegan is the perfect guy where you're like, yeah, let's get behind this guy. Let's figure it out. Let's ice this game. Let's go home. And I think you'll be seeing that maybe not in 2024, but we'll be talking about how much we love him in 2026. So for right now, is that a position battle? Maybe not day one, but I really think it'll be a position battle. Come down the line, Keegan versus Steen. It'll be very interesting. The last one, again, I keep repeating it. It's like it doesn't feel like a position battle today, but it's going to be because you look at slot corner. They brought Avonte Maddox back, and he's been a staple here, right? Like we love Avonte Maddox, and we wanted him to stay healthy, but so far in his career, he has not been able to do that, and he's back on just a short-term 1-year deal. It's not a lot of guaranteed money. They could probably move off that contract if they needed to, if somebody shined. Now, this is one where you hear all types of names. Maddox is the obvious answer because he's been slot corner for the Eagles for quite some time. But you bring in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and you assume that you're going to have him play safety. But then they go out and they get a bunch of different guys. Like, do they want Cooper DeJean to be on the field right away and just almost do a basketball kind of take and just be like, all right, let's put our 5 best secondary members on the field. Like, it doesn't matter position, who's best where, just get our 5 best guys in the field. Do they think DeJean is that guy day one? And if so, he probably is playing safety with Blankenship. You move Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to the slot. And on the outside, I'm assuming Darius Slay is still on the team. He's your CB1. Quinyon Mitchell learned from him. Now, on the other side of that, who is the starting cornerback? And somebody brought this up in our comment section, so thank you for doing that. They said, we only have 1 or 2 starters from the draft this year, and didn't mention Quinyon Mitchell as one of those starters. And you're saying, well, he's your first-round pick. Obviously, he's going to be the starter, right? Well, Isaiah Rodgers is fascinating because he was balling out for the Colts in 2022, gets suspended for the entire season 2023. This is a guy who has not played slot corner before, and you assume would play on the outside. So who is winning that battle at CB2 opposite of Darius Slay if they keep Slay around? And do you just go rookie right away and start him CB2? Where's Kaylee Ringo fall into this? He was balling out. I thought after a disastrous start against the Cowboys last year, he bounced back and was one of the more impressive guys in the secondary. Does he get a look at slot corner? Eli Ricks spent time there as well when Avonte Maddox was hurt. What do we do with him? Sidney Brown, another guy. He played safety. He played slot corner when Avonte Maddox was out. He is supposed to be on track to get back and be healthy by the start of the season, which I think is phenomenal news because he is a guy I was super high on and super excited they drafted last year. Is he your starting safety next year, or do you like him better at slot corner? They have a lot of different options, and it's very funny because this is a position where we're like, it is brutal at every single level. On the outside, inside, safety, whatever it may be. It's what the math is not mathing. There are guys there and they're not playing well. Now, you draft Quinyon Mitchell, you draft Cooper DeJean. Both of them have first-round grades on them by every metric and every analyst and everything like that they could be day one starters in the league. But you're saying to yourself, well, we still have Darius Slay's contract and you expect him to be there. And well, we just got Isaiah Rodgers back. And before he got suspended, he was really good. Is he still going to be the same after the gambling suspension? We'll see. And then you add on the fact that we brought Avonte Maddox back, and you add on the fact that we just extended Reed Blankenship. And all of a sudden you're saying, we got too many Tetris pizzas. We got too many different pieces. We're trying to fill out the Sudoku puzzle. And right now, every number is still on the board. I think the secondary as a whole is going to be interesting, but I think it starts with slot corner and what you want to do with that, because there's multiple guys on your roster that if they're your starting slot corner, that opens up spots at safety. And I think that's where you start to, if they figure out slot corner, then they can figure out safety, then they can figure out corner. And then it's just a battle of Quinyon Mitchell versus Isaiah Rodgers. Rodgers, again, if you look at the stats from before he got the suspension, he was not playing in the slot. He was playing outside. I did not factor him into the slot corner thing. I think it's specifically a battle at the outside corner position for him. So a lot of names there. That'll be intriguing. That'll be like a daily battle. And hey, what better way to prove that yourself than having to go against Dallas Goedert across the middle, A.J. Brown with a new contract, Devontae Smith with a new contract, maybe the best wide receiver duo in the league, every single day at the NovaCare Complex in August is going to be a show. A bunch of dogs on offense going against a bunch of guys fighting for starting jobs in that secondary. We are going to find out well before we ever see Jordan Love who is about it in that secondary, and I'm very excited for it. So those were the 3 positions I wanted to cover today. Again, that is what it is right now. You think about when they got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson originally, that happened in July, August, right around training camp time. They are always willing to make moves over the summer to improve this roster. Roster management is never done when it comes to Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles. So those are position battles right now. I'm assuming they will continue to be, and they will be through training camp into the early stages of the season, but you got to like where the Eagles sit right now, and hopefully they continue to improve this roster. We'll be back with the full show. Kevin and I going over everything that happened with the Eagles and Cowboys recently as we start to just get a good idea of what the team's going to look like in 2023. Thank you again to everybody who watched the live stream. Subscribe now, subscribe through the offseason. We'll have constant content coming. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.